Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Constructive Criticism. I'm your host, Spencer, and I'm joined by my co-host, Seth Manfield. And once again, guys, this is an audio podcast, Seth.
We need to think about, next week we have intros. We do our own intros. We'll have something prepared, I think.
And Jon Stern.
Hi, guys.
Dude, you just got back from a GP. You were X1 in round, was it 7?
Yes, I was 6-1. And then I lost round 8, and then the cut is after round 8, but they made it more in line with the limited GPs where you play round 9 on the same day. Mm-hmm. So I lost round 8, lost round 9, and so I'm going home. I'm 6-3. I'm like, well, I guess I can run the table for like X3 finish. It's
like $1,000.
I'd rather do that. Whatever. And there's some cash too. They also changed the payouts. I don't even know what it would be, but I thought that was better than playing the PTQ. But then I lost round 1 very quickly to Tron, like in 15 minutes or so. And at that point, I'm like, I need to go 5-0 for an X4, or I can just go join the PTQ. And 5-0 is it's gonna be a 6-round PTQ. So 5-0 I get to play winning in for top 8 of PTQ, and it felt about the same. So I decided to play PTQ because the invite was more important.
Sure.
Than I did badly in that. So
we'll get into your tournament in a little bit. But you know what? First, we should talk about our sponsor, Oasis Games. You can check them out at mtgoasis.com. You can get 15% off of your first order by using the code CCMTG. I just went to Oasis this week, and I walked in the door, and I was like, man, this is like home to me. Like, this is so amazing. I really appreciate it. I was so happy to be there. I got to hang out with the owner, Alex. Having a sponsor like Oasis means a lot because they really care about us as content creators. They want to make sure that we have the cards that we need, stuff like that, and it means the world to me to have a sponsor that is so responsive. That I feel like home in. I can just go sit on the couch. I actually work from Oasis sometimes at my job, so it's really cool to have a sponsor like them, and everybody who's ever been there really loves them. So you should check them out. You can have 4% off of every order by using the code would that be good at checkout. No spaces on that code. It's just would that be good, and it would be good, guys. It would be good to get 4% off of every order. So with that being said, don't forget to check out the rest of the network. You have the Even Odds podcast with the villain Seth Mansfield, as well as Mason and Trey, as well as everything that's going on there. I talked about the Hive Mind this week on Twitter. It's one of the shows on our network. Check out the Hive Mind if you're into interview podcasts. This guy gets the best out of people. John is amazing. You should check that out. So. You can support the podcast directly, though, because the podcast is brought to you by our listeners. You go to patreon.com/ccmtg, become a patron of the show. And we've had some Patreon growth the last couple of weeks, right after the holidays. So it's really, really appreciated. Patreon.com/ccmtg. I'm very happy with where we're at. I'm happy with what we're doing. And I'm happy to see the direction of the show. I know that Seth has made a post on Facebook about dedicating himself to the Patreon group. So if you are a patron of $12 or more, it's literally the best way to get a hold of one of the best players in the world, as well as me. So,
Yeah, anyone who joined after the past couple weeks, thank you for that. And we have a Facebook group it's a pretty closed group. You can come, ask me questions, ask John, ask Spencer, pose something to the chat, and we will try to get back to you. That's one of the benefits to it. But beyond that, just your support is definitely appreciated. We're a growing podcast, even though it's been around for a while. We've recently changed some things, having just added John and myself. So cool.
Yeah. With that being said, one of the benefits of being a patron, John, is the Patreon question. And this week, John, it says streaming on Arena is going to be a big part of 2019. How is that going to change the way you play Magic? And I wanted to start with you, because you actually don't like Arena.
Yeah, I mean, I don't dislike the program, but yeah, go ahead with the full question. Then I'll.
That is the full question.
Okay, so I don't dislike Arena, but the way I'm thinking about Arena, is I've tried it. I think the interface is really nice. It's fun to play, but I'm not looking for more fun ways to play Magic right now. I'm specifically looking for tools for competitive play, and until you can basically replicate how you play competitive Magic with the stops and various things, then I don't see a reason to do it other than being prepared for when, like, they're going to announce competitive play on Arena. I mean, it's coming. We don't know exactly what the format will be, whether, how often there'll be tournaments or how it will work, but that's coming. So there's reason to get into it now just so that you're prepared for that. But right now, I'm not going to do it till they announce anything.
Do we know the date? So we know that there's an announcement coming this month, right?
Yeah, they just said January. Yeah, I don't know when. I was hoping it would be like first week after New Year's, but it seems like it'll take a little longer.
Yeah, I don't know if this is official. I don't know if there's been an official.
You about to break some rules, Seth? You had to say something you're not supposed to because I don't want to get in trouble.
No, I think it's already known that there's going to be a meeting between people in the MPL, players in the MPL in Seattle, and that's happening towards the end of January. And I don't expect any announcements before that meeting. So,
what is the date of that meeting? Can you say that?
Yeah, it's like January. Like, I think it ends like there's like the end of January. I'll say it's like towards the end of January. So, like, I don't know what they said regarding there's going to be an announcement in January, but if they said something, that's news to me because I don't remember hearing that.
So I have a question for you, John, because I've changed a lot of the way I play Magic recently, and my win percentage and how I feel about myself as a Magic player has actually improved since Arena. And a large part of that is because I'm a dad. But, I play far more Magic now than I ever could on MTGO. If I wanted to draft, I had to set aside a pretty significant amount of time to do the draft, and then also to play those draft rounds, right? The games are just so much slower on Magic Online. And even that being said, it was still faster than me going to a game store, right? But one of the things that I've really appreciated about Arena is I can go join a league or a queue, and I can focus on something, right? So if I'm trying to figure out, like, how do I feel about these sideboard cards, I can go play 5 matches in like an hour and a half, and that's pretty insane. It's something I would never get anywhere else. And it's interesting that you're saying until I can mimic exact constructed play, and maybe I'm undervaluing, or exact competitive play, maybe I'm undervaluing the ability to bluff. I mean, I hold control sometimes in certain situations on Arena. I do certain things to throw off my opponent. But overall, I think I've gotten better at Magic since Arena came out.
Well, I tell you what, I was watching your stream last week. I think it was, you were playing Blue-White in Standard. And I was watching you play a game where you played Teferi, you had no 2-mana spells, you plus it, and it just skips through his whole, like,
right.
You have nothing.
I have to hold control there.
Yeah, and you can do that. You can hold control.
If you just hold control, it holds priority and lets you click OK.
Okay, but like, you don't want to have to do that during. So the normal method of play is not, you don't click OK during their upkeep, draw, and all that stuff. You just can respond to any spell, right? In normal mode, if you have a spell. So it skipped through his turn, and then the next turn you drew a 2-mana spell. I don't remember what it was, and then it paused. And I think it was a Seal Away. You drew a Seal Away, and then he had a choice of, like, all out attacking your Teferi or trying to split the damage. And I don't know if he was cluing into that or not, but, like, to me, it was a clear tell that you drew a 2-mana spell, and the most relevant one was Seal Away, and it was very relevant in the game. I don't think he picked up on it because he made a bad attack.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't have defeated in that stream, right?
I stopped watching at that point. Yeah. So I watched like 2 games before that, and I was like, "This is so annoying," because, like, the timing clues.
Are you mythic in your?
No, I don't play the best of one right now because it's.
Oh yeah.
Because you don't get anything other than the rewards. So until I know what best of one is for, I'm just, like, doing my content. So.
Fair. I do agree with your point that, like, you're going to get a lot more repetitions in that way. I feel that there's a risk when you do that of things being too autopilot and you're not really digesting what you're learning. Like I when I test, I'm not really interested in, I went 6-4, I went 7-3 as much as what I'm learning.
Yeah, but that's a good point. And one of the things that I've done, I mean, if you watch my stream, the last 2 streams, is I do have a Google Doc where I'm writing like down what happened in the game. But I also go into the stream now. I talk about like what am I trying to learn this stream. So for example, I talked about how I didn't feel like I had enough negates last stream. And then at the end of the stream, I was like, yeah, so we know we wanted a negate in these 3 matchups. We definitely didn't have enough. We changed the deck list on stream. And then today, after reading Andre Manguchi's article on the same deck, he talked about not playing Search for Escanta and playing Treasure Map in the main deck of the Blue-Red Dragons deck. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to try that out. So I tried that on this stream. And I think that because of the speed of stuff, you can do stuff like that really easily on Arena, where you get to try things out and like dedicate yourself to knowing like what did this do, how did this play out, in a way that I just never felt like I could do on Magic Online.
I don't find Magic Online is super slow for that. I mean,
I'm also bad at Magic Online for what it's worth. I've been playing for 7 years. I'm horrible at it. Like the interface is just hard for me.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose if I want a lot of repetitions very quickly and don't mind spewing a bunch of money to buy decks just for that purpose, then I would use Arena. But like, that's not.
To be fair, it costs like the same amount to get every single deck on Arena to buy 1 deck on MTGO. So like, right, but it's not that much.
It's some cost. Like I've already paid for Magic Online. I'm renting. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm not saying Arena isn't good for anyone. For me, it's not a tool that solves the problem I currently have, and I'm going to wait till they announce some reason to use it, sure. Or, I find like a need for it.
That's fair.
But it looks fun. And I mean, when they have competitive formats that are relevant on Magic Online, on Arena, like Seth, you said you're streaming Momir. Like I don't want to watch Momir, but if I see, Seth streaming standard decks, I would certainly watch that. And so the question the patron asked was, how is streaming going to change how you play Magic? And for me, it could change that I consume a lot more content basically by watching that stream instead of League of Legends or some other game, because I don't watch Magic Online. I find it's not very watchable.
Yeah, I agree. Well, first of all, thank you for watching my stream, John. I really appreciate that. Second, the reason that I went with you last, Seth, is because this is you now. Like this question directly impacts you.
Yeah, I mean, I did not stream at all last year, and now I'm going to be streaming, at least 400 hours, and definitely more than that, over the course of the next year. So that's a lot. I had my first stream. I know you popped in for a minute there, Spencer, so I appreciate that. I had my first stream this week, and I'll be doing another stream, and I'll be doing a lot of streaming. Okay, and the thing is, and it takes some getting used to, especially for someone like me, who's so used to going and playing tournaments all the time. But being a professional Magic person, player, whatever you want to say, I feel like in order to, the future of being a pro, quote unquote, kind of involves streaming. Like that's the message we're getting, is that it involves Arena and it involves streaming. So it doesn't really matter if I actually like it or not, but that's just what it is, And so like, I'm still getting used to it, right? Like I can't say, oh my gosh, like this, like, I mean, yes, I'm going to be like, there's a lot of great things that are coming, right? But it's hard to fully process them still for me because yeah, I'm still working on my stream. Like, I had like 1 or 2 technical difficulties. I'm still fixing it. I'm adding more information about it. Right now I'm still building up my collection on Arena. Like I started bronze and people are watching me do Rivals of Ixalan drafts, and I'm just like, all right, like maybe this isn't what you wanted to watch, or maybe you didn't want to watch me playing Momir. This is what I'm doing. I want to get the cards to build my standard decks, and that's the thing. That's what that's part of Arena. And so I am excited by this process because it's something completely new to me. Like I'm still wrapping my head around the idea of, all right, like say next year I'm not in the MPL, like what am I doing? I'm probably like do I want to be like I'm gonna be streaming, right? Like that's
Well,
what I would be doing.
it was funny. I
You
was
know?
listening to the Pro Points podcast, and they brought this up. They're like, "Well, what happens when you fall off?" It's like, I don't know. You just streamed for a year. Hopefully, you built up a community of people that have subscribed to you, and that your income is supplemented by your stream, and that's your job now. Like, whether or not you fall off the MPL, if you stream right, like, you should just be able to do that for a living. Like, and then easily get back on.
That's the theory, right? Like,
Right.
It's still yet to be determined if the streaming economy can actually support, like, how many players can it support, right? Like, we had maybe, I don't know, a handful, maybe 5 players.
Yeah,
I don't know,
but there's
like
10 times the viewers of Arena that there ever were of Magic Online already, right? Like,
yeah.
we went from 2,000 people watching Magic to 10,000 all the time. Like, it's
Yeah.
It's
And I think we need to continue that trajectory up, and it probably will continue. And so it gets to this point where, hey, I hope you guys like me, because Magic playing Arena it's not about winning and losing as much as being an entertainer. Like, that's what it is. Like, it's a personality thing.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, being good helps. Like, you know, #1 player in the world. But if I go on stream and I have, you know, however many people watching me, certainly not as many as the top streamers, right? Who stream on a regular basis, and I could say, hey, I'm way better at you at Magic. That doesn't really matter, you know. Right. It's about wanting to watch someone stream, and so Arena is a great tool for that. And yeah, like I'm getting used to the idea, and I'm excited by it, but I'm also nervous, and I think that's how I will be for a while, as I will have both of those feelings.
I'm glad that they offered it to the streaming contract to all of the top 32, rather than like picking a few, and give everyone the chance to, you know, create their brand and, you know,
it's so cool,
find their niche. Yeah.
I completely agree.
That not all 32 will make it or will want to do streaming full time, but I mean, you know, give people a shot.
But it's not even necessarily about will all of the 32 want to, because it feels like we all want to do this. We all want to be in the MPL, and we want to make a living streaming. But like you said, I don't think, like, some people don't have.
How many outside of Jerry turned it down?
I don't know the information. I think there were some that turned it down.
And Jerry makes complete sense, by the way. Like, he has a super successful podcast. He didn't need the additional money because he gets that from his show. I mean, it made sense, but it was interesting.
I really like that Jerry is willing to just say, you know, I don't really want to do this, and not worry about the consequences of that. And, you know, it's really cool to see someone able to do that, especially in Magic, where you're often sort of doing a bunch of things you don't like, whether it's going to GPs because you need points. And he's really like, yeah, I want to do this. It's going to be beneficial for me, or I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it.
I think that he rubbed off on his co-host too. I mean, I was debating if I ever wanted to play a PPTQ again, and like, I realized that what I wanted to do was create content. And I wanted to jump on what Seth was saying really quick too, but I think that what you're saying is right about Jerry, and we need to, we should support the creators that we love, and like, and if you have the time to check out Seth's stream and can give him feedback to improve it, you definitely should, because like, this is now a huge part of Seth's life. I mean, like, it's so much. And you know, one thing that I'll say, Seth, is I actually really like that you started out with Momir, because when I started streaming, it's really hard. Like, unless you typically talk the entire time you play a match of Magic, streaming is just so different than like sitting at a Grand Prix, putting your head down, and like figuring this out. It is completely different. And I actually thought starting out with Momir was a really good idea, because it allowed you to get used to talking while playing Magic.
Yeah, and I think I feel I'm like, once you've done a few streams, the comfortability starts to come, and but it's not for everyone. That's like, you can be a great player like a Yuya Watanabe, but like, he might not want to stream. So that means if he doesn't make the MPL, he's just he can no longer, you know. So there's gonna be different storylines. It's a changing environment. I'm super excited to Wizards invited me to the early streamer event for
so you'll have all the cards.
Allegiance. Yes, and they
let me send you some lists. Seth.
Yeah. Shoot me lists if you're in the constructive criticism Facebook group. Definitely.
Oh, we should totally do a poll for submit decks and then do a poll for you to play on stream from the Patreon.
You guys should tell me what to play for sure. That's
I'll talk to Seth offline. We can see if we can set that up. Let's move on to our always improving. So always improving is the point of the show. We believe if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. We want to be doing what we can to be improving all the time. This week to improve, I'm going to thank our patron for that question. That was actually a really good question. It was a good discussion. I apologize for not thanking you right away. So that's how we're going to improve the podcast this week. But I'm going to go first if that's okay. I'm doing 2 things to improve at Magic right now. One of them is my Quest for 10 series. So right now, that's the challenge that I've issued to myself and anybody who would like to join in is you get 10 wins with every major deck in a specific format. So, and you record those results. So you put them in a Google Doc, you write a report for Reddit or our Facebook group. And basically my goal is I'm going to be doing videos that you can check out on YouTube. But I want to be able to I think I talked a little bit about this last week, but I want to be a better co-host to these two. And a better host to know what to ask them about Standard, to ask them about other formats that we might talk about. And the Quest for 10 is kind of my way to play more Magic, to get myself to play more Magic and do something that I enjoy. So one of the things that John and I think both really like about Magic is like achieving like micro goals. I think if I've talked to John, like we both enjoy the act of trying to get to the Pro Tour. And when you're streaming, and when you're creating content, you don't have those same goals anymore. So I created one for myself, and the Quest for 10 is kind of like my way of creating micro goals for myself. And I'm really excited about it. Check that out on YouTube, but it's gonna be really fun. The other thing I'm doing, the game podcast has a 50 deck challenge. There's no way I get all 50 decks, but I am. The goal is that when the set is spoiled, or while the set is being spoiled, you try and brew 50 decks. And so any that I actually really like, I'm going to be putting in the Facebook group. But I've long time considered myself a brewer, and I actually think it's one of my strengths in Magic is just being able to identify decks, break down mid-range control and ramp decks. I'm going to be trying it with aggro decks too, to try and get out of my comfort zone. But yeah, those are 2 ways that I'm trying to improve at Magic right now is kind of flex different muscles and just try and get better. So with that being said, Seth, what have you done to try and improve at Magic this week?
Well, I mean, the easy answer relates to our last question because this was my first ever stream for the MPL. So that was right now. That's what is on the forefront of my mind, to be honest. I have actually a brand new computer. As you can see me, I've got like a different type of setup that I've had previously. So I've been kind of trying to get the technical stuff down for not only the stream, but now the podcast. So
luckily they can only see 6 of the 9 trophies on, on the shelf behind you.
Yeah. So, but beyond that, I'm enjoying getting to play other formats that I wouldn't otherwise be playing. Like if I was just preparing for a Grand Prix, would I be playing Momar? Would I be playing Rivals? No, but I actually really enjoyed doing that. Like Momar was, I had played it on Magic Online, right? But like at some point I sold my Momar avatar, and then I just like haven't played it for like 10 years or whatever. And then I saw it on Arena, and I was like, oh, well, I can just hop in a queue for, what was it, like 500 golds?
I have no idea. I haven't played yet. I didn't know it was on there. I'm gonna try it now.
It was like nothing. It's like I mean, that's probably the equivalent of like $1. Like, and you can just play a full Momor tournament. So it's just like you don't even need anything in your collection. You can just jump in and play. So that was fun, and just kind of like refreshing my memory. Hey, like these are things you can do at Magic to just like dirtle around and just have a good time and not stress about it too much. And that's kind of where I've been at.
One of the interesting things about Momir kind of reminds me of the way that people play. I don't know if you guys ever played Mental Magic with a stack of cards, but basically one of the things that people will do is they'll have a stack of cards, and then you have to play the card for its converted mana cost. You can like play any card face down as a land, and then you can play any card as at its exact converted mana cost, except for the card on the piece of paper. So one of the things that I enjoyed while watching you play Momir is you were thinking about the cards that you could hit off of the lands that you were playing. And that was good. I think that it flexes a different part of your muscles in Magic that you wouldn't use if you weren't doing that.
Yep, so, I agree.
Jon, you went to a Grand Prix this week. You had a way different experience than Seth and I, as we just streamed. But why don't we talk really quickly about your experience and how you improved in Magic this week?
Okay, well, so I did day 2, but I dropped after losing the first round on day 2. I think so. There are 2 specific situations that I want to talk about from the GP, which were basically 2 play mistakes that I made, and I don't think they're very complicated board states or anything, so I'm gonna try to explain them. And basically, what I'm trying to do for my always improving is try to figure out, okay, why did I make this mistake? So the first one, I'm playing against a Phoenix player, and I have 12 points of burn in my hand. He's at 15. And I have a really high life total, like 17 or something. I have 2 Searing Blaze, a Lightning Bolt, and a Rift Bolt that I just suspended. And he plays a Crackling Drake that is around 7 or 8 power and has 1 mana up. And I've been waiting for him to play a creature so that I can use my Searing Blazes. And I have a fetch land in play that I've been holding. I've got 4 lands, so I can go Blaze when I untap. So I thought about, so the only way this plan goes badly is if he has Spell Pierce. And it's possible, it's a post-sideboard game. He could have it. It's sometimes not even played. Sometimes a one of, like it's unlikely, but it's possible. And I was like, well, if he doesn't have Spell Pierce, I end of turn bolt him, I Rift Bolt him, and I Blaze twice, kill his Drake. He's at 3. I have it's basically impossible for me to lose from that point. So that's what I did. I just end of turn bolted him, untap, Rift Bolted him, sacrificed my land, Searing Blaze, and he had the Spell Pierce. And what happened was, so the next turn he couldn't kill me. He did he was able to do like 12 or 13 points. I knew he had an Arclight Phoenix in his hand that I'd seen from some spell effect. I forget what it was. So I won the game, and I think it's dangerous to be like, oh, I won, so the mistake doesn't matter.
Can I pause you because I want to ask a question?
Sure.
Just because I think a lot of the listeners are in my spot, right, where we want to learn from you. So when you told the story, I thought, well, you could Rift Bolt the creature, and then you're protected from Spell Pierce 100%, and then you can wait for him to play another creature to play the second Searing Blaze. Is that the play that you think you should have made?
No, that's a better play, and that was the play that I after. So on the next turn cycle, I'm like, that was really when he had the spell. I'm like, man, I could have just Rift Bolted the Crackling Drake, and that's a better play. He's not he had 3 cards in hand, and he could definitely put 2 Phoenixes in play and race me drawing 2 burn spells. So that's a good play. It's better than the play I made. What I should have done is I should have put the Rift Bolt trigger on the stack. The suspend trigger, then sack my fetch line, Searing Blaze it twice. If he Spell Pierces the second Blaze.
Oh, that's even way better than my play.
Yeah, so that's basically, that means if everything goes well, I basically do what I want to do, Blaze the thing twice, Rift Bolt him, and I'm great. And if he has a Pierce, well, then I take my backup plan of make sure the Crackling Drake is dead, and then try to draw to burn spells before he can kill me, which I will probably be able to do.
Well, here's the downside. I thought about all those lines when you were telling me the story, but the downside to making to me it makes sense. Untap, upkeep, Rift Bolt trigger on the stat, play the Blaze. but you are if you Rift Bolt the Crackling Drake, you're losing 3 damage no matter what, right? You're doing 3 less damage to your opponent.
No, well, it does both, right?
But if you Rift Bolt, if you Rift Bolt the Crackling Drake, your opponent's at 3 more.
But if you use the suspend counter trigger as your metric to seeing if they have the spell pierce, then you protect yourself from like potentially not having to, right?
Well, I'm saying, like, say you untap, right? You go Searing Blaze, you crack your fetch, you Searing Blaze, and then you Blaze, and then it gets spell pierced. It still could be right to Rift Bolt to the face. I'm not sure, but like if you Rift Bolt the Drake, doesn't that mean you need to draw like more burn?
Well, if I Rift Bolt the Drake, he's going to be at 9. So yeah, I need to draw a fair bit of burn. Yeah, that does. But the Drake is going to kill me in 2 turns. So like I think having the Drake dead is kind of essential, and it's very possible the Drake kills me in 1 turn based on the game up to that point. I felt so I knew he had an Arclight Phoenix. I think he had 3 cards in hand, and I felt it was likely that he had a spell. He had been tapping out basically every turn.
But you said you won the game?
I won the game because he could only do so. I blazed the Drake twice. He pierced the second one, and I blazed him Rift Bolt, and he was able to do like 11, and I drew burn. I think maybe he was at 12 and not 15. Okay. I'm not sure, but
and it could have been if you had made the correct play. Given your draws, you could have lost the game, right? Like that's a possibility.
Yes, I could have lost. And
so I think there's a trade-off there still.
It's still better. Like I'm going to Searing Blaze twice, and then decide what to do with the Rift. Oh, so you're saying like
he's saying that the burn to the face was always better.
I'm not saying it's necessarily. I just have to think about like I wasn't sure, but like it could be better, right? Because
if that doesn't change, like if he. I can still choose to do that.
The spell pierce is always going to take the 3 damage away, though. So, like, I guess you're taking 6 away if you do it that way. But see, that's why that's actually one of the reasons that I like my line, though, right? Is that if you just automatically say 3 with this Rift Bolt, resolve, and then cast the first Searing Blaze, then you actually only lose 3 and can never lose 6.
I think that's the worst line.
You think that's the worst line?
Yeah. I think it's the worst line.
But you know he has a Phoenix.
Yeah.
I know I'm not going to lose the ability to cast Searing Blaze, except that I don't have another land in my hand. I don't have any other cards in my hand. Those are all my cards.
Wait, hold on. This is like a good moment for me to learn from Seth Manfield on the podcast. Wow, how is that the worst line? If you know he has the Phoenix, like...
But you don't know he has the spell pierce. Like there's a very good chance that he doesn't have the pierce, and by Rift Bolting the Phoenix first, you're losing 3 damage by doing that. So there's really no, like, I think I agree with John. There's really no downside to just like you're gonna go blaze no matter what. So you might as well do it in the upkeep. But I think losing the 3 damage could be very costly because sometimes you just draw 2 lands in a row with burn, and then like you could have killed your opponent and did not in that scenario. So
is there any thought to just if you had just not played into Spell Pierce, doesn't your opponent just die?
Well, how do I not play the Spell Pierce?
So if you just ripple their face, blaze, pass the turn, right?
Well, you do have to crack your land, right?
Oh, you have to crack the land, so then in the next... Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, basically the point of this, like, this scenario was I won this, like sometimes when you win the game and you make a mistake, you don't think about it anymore. And I want to make sure that I think about my mistakes and why I made them. And I think why I made it is when I play Magic, I'm a little on the slower side. So when I play a slower deck and I figure out a play, I just make it almost immediately. I don't have the ability to try to timing bluff people because I have to be concerned about the clock. When I was playing Burn, I can spend a few seconds. It really doesn't matter. But I'm still in the mode of I found a really good play. I'm just going to make it. It only loses to Spell Pierce, which is unlikely. But I think I need to be like, oh, well, it only loses Spell Pierce, but maybe there's a way to play around Spell Pierce, or at least make sure, like, leaving the Crackling Drake for a turn I felt very risky. Anyway, I have a second scenario, which I made the wrong play and lost because of it, but it's much more difficult, I think, to find the right play. I asked about 5 or 6 pros after, and I think only Nathaniel Knox came up with the correct play after listening to it for a while and what other people were suggesting, and a lot of people got it wrong. So I'll present that scenario. It's basically the situation is I have an Eidolon in play. My opponent is empty-handed. He's at 10 life. I play the Eidolon. He draws, passes the turn. I'm at 6. He's at 10. Then the next turn I attack, put him to 8. And on his turn, he plays a Goblin Guide, going to 6, and attacks me. So he's got the 1 card in hand he drew last turn. And after the Goblin Guide Eidolon trigger, we're both at 6. And my hand at this point is Lightning Bolt, Skullcrack, and Helix. So we're in a spot, and if you've played Burn or played against Burn a lot, you get into these spots, or Burn versus any aggressive deck, where both players are semi-locked out by the Eidolon, and like anything you do is very risky. And I'm trying to figure out like what to do about the attacking Goblin Guide, whether I should cast any of my 3 spells. Or
how many lands did you have in play?
I have 3 lands. He's got a bunch of lands, including a fetch land.
So you have a Helix, a Skullcrack, and a Bolt in your hand.
And 3 lands.
And you're currently at 6 with the Goblin Guide attack before damage.
Yeah, and the Goblin Guide revealed a Searing Blaze on top of my deck.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's easy for listeners to sort of understand the full scenario if you're not used to the Eidolon.
I think that's pretty good.
Okay, so
Eidolon, for the listeners who don't know, deals 2 damage whenever any player casts a spell that costs, is it 3 or less?
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Which is everything in both of our decks. We're playing a Burn Mirror, so...
Okay. I want to go first because I want to be told why I'm wrong here.
Sure.
So in my head, you let the... Oh, you're playing a Burn Mirror.
Yeah.
Well, I would definitely just take the Goblin Guide, pass, attack, cast Lightning Bolt.
Okay, so that will lose to virtually every card in his deck. So
no, because then you can Helix and oh no, because you died to your Helix cast. I'm just an idiot. All right, good talk.
Yeah, I think the card you need to be thinking about the most here is Skullcrack from the opponent, right? Because that's the card that can stop your Helix, but if you Helix the Goblin Guide, that to me is probably the right play, but keep going.
Helix the Goblin Guide?
So if you Helix the Goblin Guide, he can just kill you in response with a Boros Charm.
So
yeah.
So virtually everybody that I showed it to, a bunch of pros, they all said Helix the Guide eventually. And mostly because it only loses to Boros Charm and beats everything else. And it's very intuitive. You want to... So basically, let me run through my thought process in this spot. The first option was do nothing, in which case I go to 4 from the Goblin Guide. I can attack him back to 4, but then he's attacking me to 2, which would lock me out. And once I've taken the 2-point hit, I can never cast a spell because that would put me to 2, and then he can respond with any spell to kill me.
Sure.
So my second option, and a few people said this, was to burn him and ignore the Goblin Guide. And then you have a choice of whether you're going to burn him with a Lightning Bolt or the Helix. Both of those kind of lose to, basically that means the Goblin Guide's going to hit me to 4. And my trigger of bolting him puts me to 2. So that's going to lose to Skullcrack, Boros Charm, or Lightning Helix, all of which I thought were cards that he could have. So I concluded basically at that point, I need to kill the Goblin Guide. I need to have board superiority. I need to keep my Eidolon and have him not have a Goblin Guide, and then I can lock him out of the game. And then the intuitive thing is, well, I have to cast a spell. That's going to put me to 4. I don't want to go to 2. So like I want to make sure I don't want to cast another spell, so I want to cast the Helix because it gains me life, but that loses immediately to Boros Charm. Whereas what I think is the correct play is to Lightning Bolt the Guide. If you Lightning Bolt the Guide and he responds,
him?
No, Lightning Bolt the Guide and you should never do anything else. Like I bolt the Guide. If he responds with Boros Charm right there, I can respond to the Boros Charm with the Helix.
Sure.
If he doesn't respond, I go to 4 from bolting, from casting the bolt. The Goblin Guide's dead. I untap, attack him to 4, and basically, if
Lock
he ever
him out of
casts
the
anything,
game. Okay.
yeah, if he ever casts anything, he's dead. So, and he can't cast something and then respond with Skullcrack because that would be 2 triggers. He would be dead. So I think that beats everything. And I was at least comforted by the fact that it was like very difficult to see this play. I showed it to people, they had time. I set it up with my cards, and nobody, basically just Nathaniel suggested it out of, I probably showed like 7 or 8 people. And I'm trying to figure out, I don't really know why I didn't see it, because I got to the point where like, basically I think I got to the point where I'm like, there's a bunch of cards I'm concerned about: Searing Blaze, Skullcracks, Lightning Helix, and Boros Charm, and play beats all of the other ones without opening another weakness. So basically it only loses to Boros Charm. And it's unlikely he has that. There's one in his grave already. He had 1 draw step. So I just went for that. And also I felt like I'd already thought for probably 20, 30 seconds, and I was like pushing the limit of what was okay. But then it took me like through the rest of the match. That was in game 1. And by the time the match ended, that's when I was like, well, I could have actually won the game if I just bolted the guide. So like, I think people say Burn's not a difficult deck to play, but there are still difficult situations that come up. And I think I need to develop a better heuristic for like, not just settling on a good play, but making sure I've found the best play, which is difficult to do under time pressure. But yeah, that's my always improving, is to try to figure out how I can get to that correct path more quickly, and how I can narrow down my thought process so that I'm only considering the plays that really matter.
Yeah, I think you're giving us an idea. I think Burn is like a deck that players, it gets this rap. I think PV was someone that just did an article about like the toughest decks to play in Modern.
I texted him. I literally texted him. I was like, "Thanks for ruining the internet for me for 2 days, jerk."
Yeah.
what was
like Burn was like one of the easiest, or like the easiest deck to play, and I was like, yeah, I play, like, I don't think you.
I don't think he said it wasn't.
He played Burn at the Pro Tour.
Okay, yeah, it definitely wasn't the easiest, but I don't know. He
said like Scape Shift and decks with like a singular game plan.
Yeah, he said Scape Shift. He said Scape Shift was like. So he did a thing where he like pulled people, both like the community and pros, and then gave his own rankings, and then gave a composite ranking to every deck.
Sure.
I thought it was really interesting, actually, and I thought I agreed with him a lot, and I hadn't really thought about the decks in that way. I think because the decks I've played, like I played a lot of Affinity, which is pretty difficult deck to play, and then switching to Burn, yeah, it feels so much easier because a lot of your choices are scripted and a lot of your spells are redundant, but you still get into these spots where like it's actually really difficult to figure out what the correct play is.
I played a ton of Scape Shift, and it was funny because like he ranked my deck as like the 3rd easiest deck to play, and I'm like, yeah, I think that once you understand sequencing, like the deck kind of plays itself. Like that's the only thing that you have to figure out is like, in what sequence do I play these spells in like certain matchups.
I think an interesting side, I don't know if he's planning another article or not, but like another article that I think would be very interesting is what decks are difficult to play against. So like, I think that's one of the problems with Burn is that, yeah, it's whether or not it's easy to play, it's with the exception of probably the Dash Shadow decks, it's a very easy deck to play against. You know pretty much exactly what they're going to do. And that's true for Scape Shift too. When I'm playing against Scape Shift, like I know exactly what's going to happen every turn and I have to beat it. And that makes it a sideboard. It makes it easier to decide, which 2-drop am I going to play, or like, basically my plays against Scape Shift are pretty automatic, which means which is different than if you're playing against, blue-white control, where you have to like play around different instances that they could have. And I think players who like play a deck that's more complicated to get an edge, that's really where the edge is coming from. It's playing a deck that is difficult to play against. And you lose some of that when you're playing Burn and probably Scape Shift as well.
Well, I want to say that one thing that I learned today is that I immediately killed myself in John's Burn situation. So,
oh yeah, I guess I did too. I said Helix
he did have the Boros Charm, and I lost. I cast the Helix on the guide.
Yeah, that was my initial read as well. So, but after what you said, that makes it makes sense to bolt. I think that's definitely the right play. So
Yeah. It's, Magic is a hard game, so that's why we have to be #always improving. So let's move on to our training grounds. This week we are talking about something specific, and we're going to talk about spoilers. It's a 2-for-1. It's a 2-for. Everyone likes 2-for-1s, guys. This week we are going to talk about evaluating cards, and we're going to do it with cards from the new set. So today we're going to evaluate some spoilers and talk about our process in looking at them and what we look for in each card. We're going to start with Domri Chaos Bringer. This card is 2 RG for a legendary Planeswalker Domri. It has a +1 to add red or green to your mana pool. If you use that to cast a creature spell, it gains Riot. -3, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal up to 2 creature cards from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. And -8, you get an emblem with, at the beginning of each end step, create a 4/4 red and green beast token with trample. Fun fact, this does not have what it enters with, but I'm pretty sure it's 4. It's either 4 or 5.
I think it's 5.
It's 4, actually, I think, because I remember going to 1 a few moments. I'm going to pull it up right now.
I think it's 5.
It's 5.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
5. So we're going to break this up a little bit, and John, you're going to go first.
Okay.
What is your initial impression of, like, do you immediately think good or bad, or do you have a more in-depth thoughts on your immediate impression?
Okay, well, so there's immediate and there's immediate. So my immediate impression is sweet, another Domri, because I love Domri, the first one.
Okay.
And that doesn't take into consideration the power level of the card. I was excited to see that this card existed. Okay, in my initial impression of the Planeswalker, of its power level, it seems like first of all, it feels like a situational card because it does not have an ability that protects itself the turn you play it, which means that it's not going to generally be good against decks that put a lot of pressure on the board. So it feels like it's a Planeswalker. It's going to provide card advantage over the long term against a control deck. Like, resolving this against a control deck is going to be good if they can't deal with it. But my initial impression is that you only want it in very specific situations, and the play pattern does not make it a strong card. I don't think it's good enough, really. The -3 is too much for it to be like a stable card advantage engine. And the plus, I mean, it's if they can deal with your creatures already, like if they can deal with your creatures, then the plus isn't giving you enough benefit. So yeah, I think it's like it's a niche card that maybe we'll see some play, but I overall don't like it. That's the first impression.
So my initial impression is typically not good or bad on Planeswalkers. That's not what I think of. I think of what style of deck does this fit in, which was my first thought of this. So a couple of things. So first of all, Planeswalkers typically have a couple of abilities. One of them is to produce mana, like whether it's Garruk or Chandra. Those are like red-green Planeswalkers that produce 2 mana. One of them is protect themselves. Both Garruk and Chandra also do that by. I'm talking the 4 mana Chandra that that deals 4, by the way. Both of them also do that by making a beast and killing a creature. This card does not do that. The other is producing card advantage. Both of them do that by making a beast and exiling your top card. This card does do that. Now, one thing that both Garruk and Chandra also did was when they plus to make mana, you could often use that to protect your card or to pull further ahead. So when you look at something like Domri Raid or Domri Chaos Bringer, there are a couple of things that come to mind. Like, immediately I thought this. I thought, okay, I was literally just looking for a Planeswalker to fit in my Shivan Fire Commune with Dinosaurs deck I was brewing. This card pluses to cast both of those cards. Shivan Fire can in fact protect it, and if I use it on 5 mana, I can use things like Lava Coil, and then they spoiled another card that deals damage equal to creatures that you have in play. So I immediately thought this card can protect itself with its plus ability, but it's a little bit more difficult. And then I was like, okay, does it fit in anything else? It probably doesn't fit in ramp decks because you can't actually consistently get a creature off of its minus ability in ramp decks because there's not enough creatures in your deck. So it actually is very specifically targeted towards aggressive mid-range decks, And that was it. That was like the end of my thoughts on the card. And those are the type of decks that I like, so I immediately liked the card. Seth?
Yeah, well, I'm actually writing an article this week specifically on Gruul, so like I've been thinking about the card a reasonable amount.
Where can they read that article?
On TCG Player, of course. But yeah, so anyways, I thought it was funny when you guys both said you thought it cost 4.
Because you thought it cost 3, right?
No, I said 5 because I knew it was 5. But when I
wait, it's sorry, you're saying it's loyalty.
Loyalty, sorry.
Yeah,
sorry.
okay.
Loyalty. When you guys both thought it entered the battlefield with 4 loyalty, and when I looked at the card, I thought, all right, 4 mana Planeswalker, probably 4 loyalty, because that's just, I feel like that's what our mind has been trained to. So when I saw 5, I was like, okay, that's good, like, because as you're saying, some of the other abilities, like especially the first one, might not stack up in the way our mind has been trained to. When we're compared it to like the best planeswalkers, like Chandra was an amazing planeswalker. Mm-hmm. So the plus ability is the one I have the biggest issue with because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but reading the card, it seems like if you can't give a creature double riot, right? You can give a creature double riot?
You can, in fact, give a creature double riot.
Okay,
so if a creature has double instances of riot, you can choose a +1/+1 counter or haste. You can choose haste, and you can choose +1/+1 and +1/+1.
Okay, good. Well, now I know that because I didn't know that before, and so I will definitely
go update your article.
I haven't submitted my article yet, but that was the biggest thing when I was looking at it. I was like, so if you play a Ravager Worm, which is like the best Gruul, or like the other Gruul mythic that's really strong.
Yeah, the 6 mana one, right?
Yeah. 6 mana, 4/5, fights things, and has riot. That one was like, all right, so you play your Domri on 4, then you play a riot worm. Like they go really well together. But can you can you double up the riot, or is the riot just fizzle? So now, all right, I'm like rethinking it. I think that makes it better, of course. So like it works. It actually works well with your riot cards because you're able to like you can give, provide haste and a counter, and it's gonna fit into creature decks, right? Like you have to play a bunch of creatures in your deck.
That's one of the reasons I like dinosaurs, by the way. I only need to play like 11 spells in that deck.
That's the awkward part about it, is that you're gonna be playing it in a creature deck, and it doesn't protect itself, but you don't really want to play a bunch of removal spells alongside of it.
We're not supposed to be talking about like this card specifically as much as our initial impressions. So I'll let you finish, and then we can debate.
Yeah, but I mean there are good cards that work well with it, and it should be like most planeswalkers. Like if you're playing Gruul, you are gonna be creature based first of all, but this is gonna be like in your list for sure because it's just gonna be really good against control no matter what.
Yeah.
But if you're, as John was saying, if you're playing against a deck that pressures you, then maybe it's like
that's true of a lot of planeswalkers though, right? Like if you're playing, like I don't know how about you guys, but oftentimes outside of Teferi in standard, like is there a planeswalker, like I don't know about you, Seth, but I'm boarding out my cards against aggro. Like it's like it's not...
but that's
I'm just saying like where what was that, John?
I kind of like keeping a card in sometimes.
but
you lost me at boarding card out. It doesn't matter what matchup follows.
It does not compute. No, I think that one of the things that I think about when I look at this card, I clearly am looking at this in a couple of different decks. I've also thought about building aggressively slanted, just creature-based decks with things like Adventurous Impulse plus this plus Shivan Fire. But I think that the ability to protect this card comes from its plus ability and understanding how these type of effects work. And it's funny that we talk about like, oh well, like this planeswalker doesn't protect itself, therefore it's bad. But it's like if you're playing a green-red deck against like a mono-white deck or a mono-red deck, your creatures are already bigger. You can just play this, plus it shock something, and you probably have a creature big enough to protect this at 6 no matter what.
Also notably, I think it doesn't I think we're thinking about it in the wrong terms. I don't think the fact that it doesn't protect itself is actually that relevant. because it has such a high loyalty. Like you can already go up to 6 loyalty. So if you can already deal 6 damage, like, and you're probably already at a lowish life total, so they're probably just ignoring your Domri because it doesn't actually interact with the board at all.
Right.
So like,
yeah, that's a big factor for me. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's a big factor because you can't kill off a creature with it. So I expect, like, the fact that you can't protect it doesn't protect your life total is more how I see it. Sure. Like, it doesn't interact with the board.
So those are our initial impressions. I think we've kind of gotten into the next question, but I'd like to talk about how we got there, which is after you have that initial impression, what is your next step? Do you think of decks? So for me, my first step was thinking of decks. Do you think of the best and worst case scenarios for the card? Like, and what do you think your next step for Domri would be or was after your initial impression? We'll start with you, Seth.
Well, I'm naturally thinking about rule decks. Like, what does green-red actually look like? Can we piece that together? We know that there's undercosted creatures with Riot in Gruul. That's what Gruul has. And so this card can be like a curve topper. It can curve into your Ravager Worms nicely. It seems like I think I put it in my Gruul deck, and I'm happy with it. And if I'm on the draw, it's going to be significantly worse. But if I'm playing Gruul, my deck probably isn't going to be that good on the draw. That's just how it is. Like,
so John, you talked about your first initial impression. Where did you go from there?
So, okay, so it's spoiler season. So my process in spoiler season is different than my process during, brewing or deck building once the full set is out. At this stage, my process is for Planeswalker in particular is to think about the normal play pattern of the card, and also think about the deck building restrictions. In this case, I think you want to play enough creatures in your deck that you have a reliable chance of hitting 2 creatures off the impulse. That's a big deck building restriction.
It's 26 creatures from Frank Carson's article or tweet.
Sure. Okay. I mean, I don't know. Sure. I mean,
I by the way, I hate whenever I hear that. Like, oh, it's 26 creatures.
No, it's
like these numbers.
No, I'm just saying, like, what? Why do you hate that?
That's just like.
I mean, to be fair, I think it was somebody played like a collected company deck with 21 hits at Worlds once. So, everything's out the window.
Yeah, it's like, all right, I'm boarding out creatures, so that means like I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's like.
Why do you need it to hit 2? If I can ask though, John, like it's such a power effect, right? You're impulsing for a creature, so.
I mean, you want to be able to hit creatures. I mean, it's not like when Frank Carson read. I mean, certainly I don't think this is what he wrote, but like if he's like, oh, you need 26 to guarantee 2, that's obviously correct. You could still miss. It's to give yourself a good chance. What is a good chance?
Right, exactly. It was to give yourself a 1.5, like a really good 1.5. But my question still remains: do you think that if you get to impulse for 1 creature, this card is significantly worse? And that the upside, like, to me, I actually disagree. I think the fact that I get an impulse for a creature means I get the best, like very good creature pretty often in my creature deck. Whereas with the upside of like getting 2 sometimes.
I mean,
if I miss, like if I hit 1 or even 0,
you're not gonna miss in a Gruul deck though. Like that's like
you can definitely miss. Absolutely, you can miss. But beyond that,
the company.
You're probably putting a bunch of lands. My point here is that you're probably, if your hit is not the cards you wanted, you're probably putting a bunch of cards that you didn't want on the bottom of your library. It puts them on the bottom, right? So yeah, you're probably like that's still good for you. It's not like the amazing hit you wanted.
It's like when somebody like cast Sphinx's Revelation, drew 10 lands, and they're like, well, I guess I'm the most unlucky person in the world. It's like, yeah, just look at your next card, man. I'm sure it's great. Like I don't know.
I don't think like that. I mean. Anyway, the point I was making is that there's a deck building constraint that you want to play a lot of creatures. It doesn't matter. The point isn't how many. Okay, so what kind of decks does it go in? It goes in high creature Gruul decks.
Sure.
And the other thing I'm thinking about is what's the play pattern. And I feel that the ideal play pattern is you play it, you -3, you get some creatures, the next turn you start deploying threats. That's if it can survive the turn. If it can't survive the turn, you have to pump its loyalty and then basically keep playing stuff from your hand while you try to get to a point where you can minus. And I feel that even if that is a good effect, it's often going to be a worse effect than just tap 4 mana, play Rekindling Phoenix.
Sure.
And so for me, like I need to see what other support there is, but those are my next steps. My next steps are to think about the play pattern. How is this going to play against aggro mid-range control? And what are the deck building constraints so that when I look through the other spoiler, when I see other cards, I'm like, oh, I have this Dominate card in the back of my head. And then I see this Riot Worm you're talking about. I'm like, oh, that could work with this. And then maybe it becomes a deck idea.
Sure. But
off the top, seeing this card objectively with no other context, I don't feel it's a very strong card.
Sure. Yeah. My next step was kind of similar in like I narrowed down the decks pretty quickly. You know, you see a Planeswalker that makes mana, you wonder if you can ramp into this one makes 1 mana, so can I ramp into a 6 mana card? You know, think about that kind of stuff, and then narrowing it down from like, okay, now what is the +2 outside of that? Okay, it makes me want to put more 1 mana green and red cards on my deck, and kind of go from there. And I think that this card will never be this like insane 4 of in standard, and that I evaluated it down to like, you know, it's a 2 of in some green red creature deck.
Honestly, when I'm evaluating cards in spoiler season, and what I'm really thinking about is not decks. I'm thinking about, is this card a format staple? And is this card something that should pre-order? And that's and I don't speculate on cards, but you know, I do want to have my play set of things I want. So that's really, this card to me is not a format staple, and it's not something I want to pre-order. And now I know in the back of my head, oh, this is a card in the format. And when I see other cards, it provides context. That's really what I'm looking for.
Jon, we gotta just move you to Utah so that you can get hooked up with that Oasis game sponsorship, so you just don't have to own any Magic cards. There you go. That's what we gotta do.
Yeah. I feel you, Jon. Like sometimes with a new set, cards get overhyped because they're new, and I think that like a lot of this is unknown. Like I feel like Gruul could be good, but like if there's like it's just like if Gruul is a deck, I see Domri. Like I see it.
I mean, it's a playable card. I agree. It's a playable card.
But if there's no like, I don't know.
It's hard before having full spoiler. I mostly just take spoiler season as this is a fun time. I don't really think too deeply about decks. That's just me.
I don't think we'll go too deep into some of these other cards because they're not Planeswalkers, so they're significantly less complicated. But the next one that we have here is Electro Dominance. This card is XRR. For an instant, deal X damage to any target. You may cast a card with a mana cost X from your hand without paying its mana cost. This is a splashy effect. So, Jon, where does your head first go with this?
Okay, so can you say that? So it's RRX, and so if you spend 5 mana, right, you do 3 damage to any target, instant speed, and then you can cast a 3 mana or less spell. That's what it does?
Yep.
Okay. So the first, whenever I see a spell with X in the casting cost, my process is to think, okay, how good is this at X equals 1, 2, 3, 4 up the scale? And are there any points where it's like really good? And I think like you're probably going to be casting this for between 4 and 6 mana usually, or you're going to be casting it really late game as like for 10. I think it's kind of, I like the card. I don't know how, like I see end of turn against a control deck, you tap 5, you do 3 damage to their Planeswalker, and then you play a 3-drop. Anytime you can play a flash spell against control is generally good. As far as like a removal spell, it's expensive. Like I don't think you're going to want to spend 4 mana to kill a 2/2 very often, when you could have already just probably cast the 2 mana card that you want to cast anyway. I think it's medium. It could see play, I feel.
Can I ask you something?
Wait, don't. But are you gonna spoil what I'm gonna say during my part?
I don't think so. It's specifically related to what Jon.
Okay.
Jon said, because we talked about another X spell on our last show in Simic, I believe.
Yeah.
But so I'm wondering because what you see as being a good X spell, or is it just like, because X spells I think naturally have to be a little bit less good at each part of the curve because they have the word X in them. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if there was like an X spell that you could that you have in mind that, okay, this is like what a good X spell should be, or something like that?
Bonfire of the Damned.
No, it doesn't have to be that good. I don't have one in my head right now, but like, what are some in standard right now?
Can I?
Banefire is an X spell that like becomes really good at certain points. I think not so much the scaling; it's that it enables that secondary effect of not being countered.
So, can I talk about the card that I thought of when I saw this for my first impression, and maybe you can talk about that, John?
Sure.
So, but the first card I thought of was Genesis Hydra.
Okay. So Genesis Hydra is a card that, to me, is not a card that is good at any particular mana cost in like a mid-range deck, and only becomes good when you're like, yeah, X is 1,000,000 or 10
that's
or
actually my
7.
opinion of this card too. I think this card has two modes. My initial impression was this card is best at X is 0 and X is as much as it can be.
X is 0.
Yeah, so fun fact, if I cast this for X is 0 in my blue-red fate
Oh come on. Oh god, you're about to throw in some like ancestral vision.
Yeah,
stuff.
I can cast ancestral visions or so the Fate Patrol deck was like pretty good like a month ago or like 8 months ago, right? So I mean, you know, Humans is on the decline.
Why would you cast Ancestral Visions when you could put a surprise welding jar?
I don't think that's
I'm just saying, like those are the two modes that I saw in this card. It was like, all right, X equals 7. I'm gonna put a Palaka Worm into play, or X equals, like, I mean, you say like one of the things we talked about last week was that ramp decks needs bridge spells, right? So if this spell lets me cast this for 3, kill something, and cast a ramp spell at the same time in my ramp deck, I'm really happy with that.
I don't feel like it does that. I don't feel like it's a suitable, like, you're not casting your 3-mana ramp spell on turn 3. You're going to wait till turn 5?
I mean, one of the problems with the ramp decks that, like, I've been building, by the way, I have not tried to put this card in a ramp deck, but I'm just saying, like when I saw this card, it was like, all right, so I want to go 2 to 4, right? Like, it's very clear that I want to go Druid of the Cal or this new creature that was spoiled today into Securitas route so that I can play, like, a Palaka Worm or a Krasis or a Carnage Tyrant. You know, like, that's clearly what the deck wants to do. But, like, also we have Grow from Ashes and Gift of Paradise, right? That don't fit into that curve, right? We don't have this perfect 2, 4, 6 at every part of the curve like we did with Wolf Run ramp and like we did with Volakut ramp, right? Where it was like we just don't have the same that same parts of the curve. When you look at Volakut ramp, I looked at it 2 days ago when I was brewing ramp decks, and it was like we had Overgrown Battlement, we had Lotus Cobra, we had Explore, we had Rampant Growth for a little while, like, and then so you would go, and then you had Harrow, which costs 1 mana, right? So like the ramp spells were significantly better, and they fit into the curve to get to 6 mana to Inferno Titan, Primeval Titan, and Summoning Trap better. With Wolf Run ramp, you had Green Sun Zenith for Birds of Paradise. You had Sphere of the Suns into Solemn Simulacrum into Primeval Titan. Like, that was your curve. And these decks don't fit that curve that way. They're more close to the green-red ramp deck of a couple years ago that was trying to go into Ulamog and Worldbreaker. And we have to remember that, like, they're not giving us these insane 6-mana ramp targets anymore. They're giving us 7-mana ramp targets that we have to work for. And they did that with Hour of Promise, and they're doing that with Grow from Ashes. And because of that, we have to fit into that world and understand that our curve isn't going to be perfect anymore. They're not giving you perfect curve ramp decks ever again.
Well, my concern with this card, so both in response to that comment and the question Seth asked me, while you were talking, I thought of another example that I think it compares to really well, which is Expansion Explosion, which I think is an example of an X spell that provides a good effect at various points. When you're spending 6 mana to do 2 damage and draw 2 cards or whatever, that's good effect. Maybe you would not play that card if it could only be cast for 6.
Right.
But with versatility of the other side of the split and also scaling up to being a massive card draw spell, I think it's a very good card in Standard. When you're talking about a bridge card in a ramp deck, though, I feel like if you're tapping 5 mana for this, you're not even really killing the thing you need to kill. Like I mean, 3 damage might not kill their 5-drop or 4-drop. And
yeah, I'm kind of coming around to what John has been saying.
Sure.
Just like I didn't come in with a really great opinion on it, and now I'm
By the way, I think this card is terrible for what it's worth.
okay.
So I think that I don't think that the deck that I talked about is good, right? I think that playing red to do whatever you're gonna do in the what did the Fate Untold deck even do? It just like blew up all the lands and then drew all the cards, right?
There was also living ends, I think. Like you can live.
Oh, I guess you could living end with this. But doesn't this get hit? That's stupid though, because this gets hit off the Cascade spell. Yeah, you can't because the Cascade spells just hit this.
Well, you can't play it. You can't play it with Cascade stuff in your deck.
So you're having a.
So the other thing with this card, which is maybe so I do think there's some potential for casting a card for 9 mana, right? If you have a rep deck, and I also think that one of the things I look for in a card is there a way to sort of cheat the rules a little bit? And this lets you cast cards that are not of the color you're playing, right? That's something to consider. Maybe your 9 mana casts an Angel of Despair or something. Sure. I don't know. And if so, I can't think of any particularly good way to use that right now. But that is something I would keep an eye on. If there's off-color spells that like provide a really good effect that you want to have in your deck anyway.
I think it's fairly likely, not that this deck is going to be good, but we will see some sort of blue-red Fate Foretold Electro Dominance. Like someone's going to try
for a couple weeks, right? Like
it's just like,
is that what it's called? Fate Foretold, not Fate Untold. I don't remember.
Fate Foretold, yeah.
Well, let's go on to the next card, because I think oftentimes in Magic, cards compare to different cards, right? We did a whole podcast a couple months ago before these guys joined the show on analogs, right? Now, that was our spoiler episode last year or last season. Was talking about analogs and how analogs exist in Magic. So one card is compared to another card. It's an analog for that card. You know, Lightning Strike and Searing Spear are technically analogs, even though they're the same card, but you get the picture. Here we have Drill Bit. It's 2 and a black for a sorcery. It's got Spectacle for black, which means that if a player was dealt damage, you can cast it for this card. For this cost, sorry. And target player reveals their hand, you choose a non-land card from it, and that player discards that card. When we see this card, we see, we talked about that initial impression, right? Our initial impression is like, wait a second, if I dealt damage to my opponent, I get a Thoughtseize my opponent for free? And that's a really strong initial impression. So, John, how do you back up from thinking that initial impression to what does this card do?
That was not my initial impression, because my initial impression is a bad effect that I would never want to put in my deck. Because my initial impression is I want to know what the card does in its base case, in which case I'm paying 3 mana for a Thoughtseize effect, which is very rarely something I'm in a main deck and very rarely something in a sideboard. So that said, wow. I'm only going to want to play this deck this card in a deck that can enable the Spectacle fairly easily. And in which case, like, I also think about the kinds of so it's a Thoughtseize effect. When do I want to play Thoughtseize effects? I like boarding them in so that I can do 2 spells in a turn against control and Thoughtseize them and then cast a big spell, or against combo. It's also good in an aggressive deck where you're like take their wrath. So I could see it being played in that scenario. But my first impression of this card is that Spectacle is non-trivial to achieve, and if a deck is trying to kill all your stuff, I mean, you're going to be spending 3 mana for a bit of the time, which means it's probably the only spell you're casting.
This is really funny, because when I see a card like this, and I think that I said that when we talked about Domri, for example, is I often think about what deck this fits in very first. Like, that's always my first impression. So in my head, it was like, okay, so I'm playing this in like a red-black or a white-black or like,
I was thinking black.
Like aggressive deck, right? Like, that's literally the first thing I think. It's like, okay, this card reads this part of this card. Okay, so I need this deck. I read the Spectacle part first, and my brain automatically says, what decks enable Spectacle? I go to the next part of the card, which is what it does. And I'm like, oh, I really want this effect in the deck that I just thought of, right? So for example, like I really want this effect in a deck that deals damage to my opponent so that I can take their wrath effects out of their hand or their removal spells out of their hand really quickly. And if I get to do it for black mana, that enables me to deal a lot more damage than I would have dealt had they had that removal spell or wrath effect. Which is funny because then the next thing I think is, what is its worst case scenario? Which is I'm casting this card for 3 mana.
That could still be playable. Like sometimes it's worth 3 mana for that effect. I think the 3 most common situations where I want a Thoughtseize effect are in standard are like taking the wraths, and I think it's good at that. It's taking a counter spell so I can resolve something else, and I think it's bad at that. And it's also playing a turn 1 effect so that I can stop their turn 2 really powerful spell like Search for Azcanta.
Why is it bad at taking wrath? Why is it bad at taking counter spells? Oh, well, in non-aggressive decks.
Yeah, if you want to resolve something.
Sure, that makes sense.
You want to resolve something else.
Yeah.
Do you want the worst case scenario? Because I will give you the worst case scenario for this.
That they have no spells in hand.
No, that they have Nullhide Ferox in their hand.
Oh, there you go.
That's the worst case scenario.
We had a stream once. Where we were playing as a Hollowed One, and I had 2 Austin Balos in hand, and they cast Burning Inquiry, and then I ended the turn with 3 in hand, and then they cast another Burning Inquiry the next turn, and then conceded. It was great. With that being said, though, Seth, you know, how does it work for you? Like, what was your initial impression, and then how did you go? Like, did you think Thoughtseize at all?
No, no, I didn't think Thoughtseize, because the thing is that the best discard spells in the history of the game are 1 mana, but you can all of them, you can actually cast them on the first turn of the game.
But you didn't always do that in like some of the Thoughtseize formats, right? Like you often did, right? But there were plenty of turns throughout Magic, like in the games that I played at PTQs and Grand Prix, where you held on to that Thoughtseize or that Inquisition, and you often still do it with duress, so that you can take the card at the right time.
Yeah, I think like Black Green would do that. Would not always cast their Thoughtseize on turn 1.
Certainly,
like that.
Certainly, there's times where you would hold on to it, but more often than not, if you have it in your hand, if you have an Inquisition or a Thoughtseize, you're going to cast it on turn 1, though. Most of the time.
Well, Inquisition especially because of that restriction.
Inquisition, that's definitely true.
Okay, sure. And yeah, I agree with John. The Spectacle, like, we're going to have to see what sort of Spectacle enablers there are, but you guys mentioned the card Duress, and that's already a card that's in Standard right now. And so the decks that you're going to have the easiest time triggering Spectacle or enabling it are the control decks, right? Because you're going to be able to get in with your creatures, no problem. But then against those decks, Duress is almost like a Thoughtseize already because they don't have that many creatures. So, like, I see this as, like, if for some reason you want, like, a 5th Duress or something like that. But it seems very corner case, and not super excited by it.
There we go. That's super interesting. I am way higher on this card than you guys. I think this card is, like 4 of main deck black-red aggro.
Okay.
A card, by the way, I know it's not one of the cards we were going to talk about, but Spawn of Mayhem. If we want to talk about good Spectacle cards, I think is
that the one that draws 2?
That's the flyer, the flying trample mythic, where 3 mana 4/4 flying trample with extra stuff attached. So that's like the one I'm the most excited by.
John, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just he mentioned Nullhide Ferox, and I just wanted to mention that I was playing white-green mid-range in Modern against Stanislav Sivka. He's playing black-white tokens, and I killed him turn 2 when he Inquisition. I went turn 1 Noble. He Inquisition by shocking himself my Loxodon Smiter, showing only Wiltleaf Liege in my hand. And then next turn, he like tanked for like 2 minutes. Is like, well, Thoughtseize you. I drew a red. So I just killed him for damage.
I have had I did that in Standard once, where somebody I don't remember what happened, but like I put 3 Lockstone Spiders into play. It's like sweet. I was like, this is the best.
It's nice.
I've definitely convinced my opponent to take the card. Like when being Thoughtseize, I'm definitely like, all right, you're taking the Smiter, right? And they're like, yeah. And so I'm like, I like put it in the graveyard, and then I'm like, oh wait, like actually it's in play. Like that sort of thing, because like they're like, oh, I forgot about that, because like I'm like, oh, all right, I'll like point at the Smiter, like that's the one you're taking.
Oh,
sort
you
of
say
thing. When they're about to think, and then they're like, yes, and I'm like, bang. That's definitely happened before.
All right. So with that being said, we talk about cards that are similar. There are also cards that, just like this one, are kind of just strictly worse than cards that you could compare them to. And I think that this card is a really great example of this. We have Quelch. It's an instant.
Quelch or Quench?
Is it Quench? It's Quench. You're right. It's an instant. It's 1 in a blue, and you can target spell until it's control phase 2. And you know what, guys? I've literally tweeted at Aaron Forsyth. I've tweeted at Mark Rosewater. I've tweeted at Sam Stoddard. I've been like, reprint Miscalculation. It is the perfect card for Standard. It's great. It lets certain types of decks attack control really well. It lets control decks attack aggro really well. Like, it is the perfect counterspell for Standard. And I like read the first couple lines of this and I was like, oh, they're gonna do it. And then I was like, nope.
I also really liked Rune Snag for what it's worth. That's like another card that I thought back to it and I was like, was that card like absurd when it was in Standard? No. Like,
no, it was fine though. It was good.
No, it was playable.
And I think that people like everybody's comparing this to Revolutionary Rebuff, and it's like you're comparing this card to a card that didn't counter half the cards in its format.
I mean,
but that's actually reasonable because I think that card saw some play. So.
It did, and it still didn't counter half the cards in its format. So I'm gonna go first, and then we'll go John Seth. But this card, I think, is the most underrated card from an internet perspective in the entire set. Not because I think it's insane, but because people think it's dog crap, and I think that it is definitely not that. Like, this is a card that can have an impact on Standard. And one of the things that I've said about this set is that it is probably going down as my favorite set of all time. Like, I think there are so many cards that could see Standard play that I don't think is always true of a Magic set. Like, so oftentimes I see 6 cards that I think could see Standard play, and it makes it really hard to do like a set review where you talk about like your 15 favorite cards. I don't think that's true of the set. I see like so many cards that can impact Standard, and the fact that this card is worse than Mana Leak is, I think, fine. Like, great. Control will probably never play this card. That's okay. I'm okay with that. Somebody said, isn't this just worse than Syncopate? I'm like, no. Mono Blue would much rather have this card than Syncopate. And I think that having interesting parts of where cards fit into. So, for example, they also spoil the card that's blue-blue, counter target creature, put a 1/1 counter on your creature. And it's like the fact that I might rather have Quelch than that card or Essence Scatter is interesting. Like, it makes for more interesting decisions. And I think this card is good. I don't think this card's insane. I don't think it's great. But I think the fact that everybody's like saying this card is really bad is really weird to me. Because Rune Snag was playable. Revolutionary Rebuff saw a little bit of play. I mean, Miscalculation saw a ton of play. I don't know. John, what about you?
Okay, well, I haven't really followed what the internet has been saying about this card, but of the 4 cards we talked about today, Domri, Electro Dominance, Drill Bit, and Quench, I'm highest on Quench of the 4. I think Quench is an excellent card. I don't think that I need to compare it. Like, I think Mana Leak is the obvious comparison, and it's worse than Mana Leak, but it has functionally the same effect as Mana Leak for a large portion of the game.
Right.
Where, and I think when you said Control Decks would play it, I think Control Decks would love this card, like an all-purpose counterspell on turn 2.
You think so? Tomorrow, you think I should play this over Syncopate?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
I think so. I mean, I don't know. Like, it depends on the format, I guess, and what you're playing against. But I think this is Syncopate when you have 2 mana. Like, if people can play around Syncopate, they can play a 2-drop on turn 3 if that's what they're worried about. They can't really do that with this card.
That's fair.
Yeah,
I think Syncopate scales better. Like, obviously, this card is worse later when people can just play more lands. It's probably bad in the control mirror.
Right.
But like,
Well,
if you're
it still
countering
counters search for S content treasure maps, so.
well, when you're on the play, but it's going to counter. It's going to counter like Omri and where Essence Scatter would miss. They can't just play around. The one that they think you have, and I think this card's very good. I think it'll be played.
Seth?
Yeah, so for me, I guess I'm not quite as well. So I think the baseline of the card is actually fine. 2 mana to counter something unless they pay 2, like, should be like on par for standard.
Yeah.
My issue is not even an issue, but an observation that there seem to be a lot of counterspells being printed into standard. Like, it seems like we already have a lot of options. Like at 2 mana, we have like 3 or 4 different counterspells already. And at 3 mana, we have multiples as well. And now, like, we're also getting Absorb, which is a great counterspell. I think that, like, in blue, if you're playing blue-white. So that's to me is, like, this is going to be competing with those cards. Like, is it better than Syncopate? Like, I feel like they're very, like, the power level is similar. Personally, I would lean a bit towards Syncopate, but...
Well, if you tap out on turn 5 for Teferi and Plus, would you rather have Quench in your hand or Syncopate? I would rather have Quench, I think, in most cases.
Yeah, and that's, I mean...
So that you can, like, hit a Vivian Reed back?
That makes in that situation, for the very next turn, I would rather have the Quench, but the fact that we're already on turn 5 and I have the Quench in my hand, and the next turn I can have 6 mana for my Syncopate.
Yeah.
I think that Seth is a little closer to where I am in the card, where it's like, it's clearly good enough to see standard play. But I think that one of the things that I have a problem with spoiler season in card evaluation is that people just, like, love or hate everything, and there's no in between for them. And there's not, like, one of the reasons that I picked Drillbrit and Quench to talk about on this week's podcast is because part of card evaluation, when you're building a new deck to go to your SEG or to go to your Grand Prix in the early weeks of the format, is like, you need to understand what your role players are. And every single card that I picked this week was a card that other than Electro Dominance, which I just wanted to see if I was wrong, and it was because, I don't know, maybe Ancestral Visions is broken, but all of these cards I think are role players. They're these 2-ofs, these 3-ofs that might see play in a deck other than Drillbit, which I am pretty significantly higher on, but I think it only fits in one deck. I think that one of the things that people need to learn is that a card doesn't have to be Jace, Architect of Thought to see standard play. Like, that's not the baseline, and we need to understand that when we look at a card, we can look at it for many different reasons.
Yep, I agree. And I think that the Quench is a card we will definitely see play. Of the 4, I agree with you. Like, it's going to see some play, and, like, cards are going to rotate out. And then maybe this is, like, a 4-of in control decks, because it's capable of being a 4-of. So, yeah.
It's kind of weird to think that, like, the Baneslayer, Jace the Mind Sculptor control deck before Cobblade, that deck did play 4 Mana League. Like, it just did.
Mana League's a great card.
I understand, but, like, you think about like people's perception of that, and, like, people are like, oh, I can play around Mana League. It's like, all right, you can time walk yourself 3 times. I don't care. Like, go do that.
At that time, I think a lot of people, like, back then were like, oh, Mana League's worse than Counterspell, right? And now we're saying Quench is worse than
Mana
League. So there's definitely this trajectory with the counterspells in that sense, but I don't know that the rest of the cards that they're printing are necessarily, like, the power levels overall seems to be going up. So that, like, I don't think that control.
I don't know. So I don't know about you. I'd be fine if they printed counterspell in standard, but I also understand that, like, for a long time, like, you would not be okay with that.
I mean, I think absorb is easily, like, the more significant. Like, if we compare absorb in Ravnica Allegiance.
I'm so glad that you guys feel this way. People gave me so much crap for saying that card was good. I'm like,
Absorb?
they're like, yeah, they're like, why would you play this over Sinister Sabotage? I'm like, what are you talking about? Have you ever played a cancel against an aggro deck? It's like complete garbage. This is so much better.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same debate. Why would you play Quench over Syncopate? Like, it's like they you're not gonna. It's not gonna be an easy comparison. Like, 3 life versus, a scry is like, which one is more valuable? Well, that's matchup dependent. That's situational. Sure. That's this. That's that.
I think okay, so the control decks playing Syncopate, they usually play like 1. Usually, is that standard? Sometimes 2.
It's 2 to 3 right now.
And I think that that's because. It's
won
hard
them early, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, like the blue-white decks right now, or like the blue decks really, they have very powerful finishers, like Teferi and Expansion Explosion, that want a Niv Mizzet, that once you get to a certain point in the game, it's okay to have a dead draw because you have such an overwhelming advantage from these threats, that I don't mind having some cards that get me there, but then end up being bad later on. So I would start with probably 3 of these in my deck, maybe. That's.
I'm interested that you guys like this in control. Like, as somebody that's been playing nothing but like Blue Eye Control and Jeskai for like 2 years now, it feels like. Basically, Brad top 8 did that Grand Prix. I took it to the next PPTQ, won that PPTQ, and have like not put down control since. I think that. I was really happy when Syncopate came out because it's like one of my favorite counter spells. But I don't know. Maybe I'll try this. Maybe this is something I'll try out.
Were you a fan of Censor?
No, I hated that card.
Okay.
So
I think
that like the fact that you can play Syncopate on 3 mana and like have it counter something like the number of times that I've played Syncopate for 2 on stream to counter something where it like is pretty high.
I think we're going to see people diversifying their counterspells because, like, if you put a bunch of one, like say you put a bunch of Quench in your deck and your opponent knows about it, the value definitely goes down. That's
already what I do. I just did a deck tech with that will be on the YouTube channel that has 2. It's a blue-white deck. It has 4 Absorb, 2 Devious Cover-Up, 2 Essence Scatter, 2 Syncopate, 1 Negate.
Yeah, and I honestly think we're going to see people have splitting Quench and Syncopate. As crazy as that is, I think
that's
we're
interesting.
Yeah, like we're going to see.
That's actually hard to play around though. Like legitimately, if like you see both of those cards game 1, like what do you do game 2?
I cast my biggest spell every turn and hope I
win. You go Lotus Cobra, Lotus Cobra, Lotus Cobra, and hope and then maybe you have a summoning trap in your hand. Okay. All right. Well, first of all, I just want to wrap this up by kind of reiterating what I said a couple of minutes ago. I think that one of the things that we can do to get ourselves better at Magic is not always trying to look for the most broken thing, and also recognizing when role players exist. One of my goals for this show was getting opinions on some tough cards to evaluate. I think that role players are harder to evaluate than like if something like obviously to like I don't know if you guys, but like when I saw Teferi, I was like, well, this is like really good. And when I saw Karn, I thought it was really good. And you're not always gonna get those cards, right? Sometimes you're gonna get Quench, and it's like, well, this is worse than like this other card that I played a ton of. And you have to think about like where I literally. It's important what John said, right? Where it's like what is the common play pattern with this card, and how does that line up in the format that I'm playing? And that is going to be far more helpful than, is this card broken? Because there's just not that many broken cards.
Yeah, I mean, Quench is not a broken card. It's a role player.
Right.
Yeah, you can only have, a small amount of cards and they're normally mythics that are going to be your broken cards of the set, like your really strong, powerful cards. And that's just how it is.
If you want to talk to us directly about some spoilers, go to patreon.com/ccmtg. Become a patron of $12 or more. That'll get you access to the Constructor Critics group. It's really appreciated. That's like $3 an episode. It's less expensive than some of the other podcasts out there. So, we tried to keep that at a competitive thing to give you access to some great minds. Like John and Seth are super great at Magic. We really appreciate them. So you can find me at Spencer13H. You can find John at Jon Stern MTL. You can find Seth at Seth Manfield, not Mansfield. You can join the conversation on the Discord, or if you're a patron of $12 or more, you get access to that Facebook group.
And remember, keep in mind it's $12 per month.
Yeah,
so
right.
It's not like a lot of podcasts. We're not talking about $12 each week. So it's essentially it's more or less $3 a cast.
Exactly.
Isn't like crazy.
It's significantly less. I mean, if we think about some of the other podcasts out there, like we are cheaper for a reason, because we love our listeners. We want to be helpful, and I think that one of the things that we need to say on the show, just a reminder that the Facebook group is ending. We've gotten kind of mixed reviews on that. One of the things that I should mention is when you look at stats on Facebook, that Facebook group has a 200% decrease in activity since these two joined the show. And, people want direct access to John and Seth. And the way they're going to get that is by becoming a patron. We have to respect the time of everyone. But the Discord, if you're just looking for people that are also trying to get better like you, the Discord is great if you want to do that for free. But one of our goals over the next year is really to increase the conversation in that Facebook group and to make it about getting everybody in there better. So go to patreon.com/ccmtg, sign up for that critics level. We had somebody sign up for the $25 per month level, which is our producers level. Really appreciate them. We'll be reaching out to you here in this next quarter. One of the benefits of being a Patreon producer on Patreon is you actually get to help us come up with topics. So we'll do a Google Hangout with me to come up with a show topic with all of you here in the next quarter. So thank you so much to both our new critics and our new producers. Go to patreon.com/ccmtg to join those discussions. We're going to wrap this up. Oh, go ahead.
Before we wrap up, I also have one more thing to...
Well, are you going to do your contest?
Yeah. I have a couple more things to say. First of all, we had two Facebook groups. So just to clarify, we're going to only have the one patron-only Facebook group. So just to clarify that, we will still have the Facebook group. And right now, like it would be great. $12 per month and you have access to that. So I did a contest run through Twitter. I put it on I got, I think, over 1,300 retweets, and then I mentioned it on the last show that I was going to be announcing.
Did I win? What did I win?
I was going to be announcing winner. Well, you actually had to retweet. I don't know.
Did you retweet it, John?
I did.
I did. Did I win? Did I win, Seth?
So I have already randomly chosen a winner to announce on the show, and I will also be choosing 2 additional winners. So there's going to be 3 total winners, and those other 2 are going to be on the stream, on my personal stream.
Sure.
But so here is the winner, and it's going to be, not familiar with the name, but he does follow me on Twitter. Name is Cole Bolin. So at Cole Bolin, I will be reaching out to you about the contest.
Awesome.
Yeah, cool.
Well, first of all, thank you everybody so much for listening tonight. Thank you so much, Seth, for doing that contest. Thank you to all of our patrons, especially our critics and our the critics group has just been amazing. The producers, it's really cool to see the Patreon grow. So thank you so much. And we'll see you guys all next week with another episode of Constructive Criticism.
See ya.